This week on Corinne's Pick, we have episode 5 with Don Perlis. Welcome to Corinne's Picks. This week we have Don Perlis. We've done 5 episodes so far with Don. This is going to be the 5th. We have a little bit of a different theme here in this episode. As you see behind me, you see a beautiful painting of a scene from Madame Butterfly. For the last 2 episodes, we've actually changed this a little bit to kind of highlight the subjects we've been talking about with Don Perlis. So we have his painting in the background. Welcome to Corinne's Picks.
Hello. Thank you.
So, you know, we've done a lot of very heavy subjects.
Yes, I know.
On this show with you. We did the Bernard Getz issue, the Eleanor Bumpers, the Howard Beach, the Central Park 5, or now called the Exonerated 5. And this episode, I think that the audience is really going to enjoy, because this is going to be a sweet episode, because these images are really not politically charged, and they really exhibit all your work exhibits your tendency to try to recreate classical paintings of the Renaissance. But these, as a subject matter, are kind of used to what people are used to seeing. So I'm going to be quiet, and you're going to do most of the talking.
Sure.
So,
okay.
I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Okay. This is a painting that was based on the opera of Madame Butterfly, and it's a scene where the lieutenant meets the 15-year-old. That's better, because that's the full painting. When he meets her for the first time, and the wedding party comes up the hill, and this painting was a 5-year project for me, actually, and I made several versions of it, even several full versions. Although I made one very large one, this is a photo of, and it was very important for me, this painting, because I didn't use any models at all. The painting is completely made up from sketches and from drawings and from research too. I had bought kimonos, and I did some drawings from models, but the painting itself was not done from models, is what I meant before. But I did some drawings from models just to study how the kimonos looked and felt, and I studied the hairstyles, I studied the jewelry, I studied the architecture, the landscape, and Madame Butterfly took place in Nagasaki Bay, and I did some research of what Nagasaki Bay looked like at the turn of the century when the story takes place, and I think the only preparation I did for it was watch. I think I used VCRs or DVDs of, and I saw a number of different productions of the opera. But as I wanted to place it in a real landscape, I had to make it up entirely. And
how did you choose the color palette? Because is it my imagination that it looks a little bit dark?
Well, it's a gray palette, because the thing about Japanese art is that it's all understated and underplayed. And one thing I was trying to do was make come to some kind of a style where I could because I always love Japanese prints, UKAO, I believe the way they say. I always love
The Black Prince.
Yeah, I always love and I love those artists. And I wanted to I wanted to see how my style could merge with Japanese style, and in other words, come at it from a European, full three-dimensional, volumetric. You call it a Renaissance, but actually it's the basis of all of European art.
Okay.
And I wanted to come at it like that, and yet incorporate Japanese art. Actually something of the kind was tried, you know, in the Impressionist era, and those artists were also very influenced by Japanese art, and like Gauguin and Van Gogh and Manet even put them into his paintings. But the tendency was what those guys were influenced by was the flatness of Japanese art and the patterning, and what I wanted to do was to bring a full three-dimensional European volumetric form, and at the same time incorporate as much of the flatness from Japanese prints and combine them to see if I could do that. And that's why it took me 5 years. So, but I like the painting a lot. I actually love it. So
These are wonderful. I think we had the next three are. They're from Angel in America, which was it a play and a movie, or just a?
It was a Broadway play,
Okay.
and F. Murray Abraham narrated a film on my work, 1994. When I first met him, we became very good friends, and he later on commissioned me to do some work for him, to document his plays, and then other times I was commissioned by the venues that he was in. And it's been a great honor for me because he's a major American actor, maybe the most brilliant, I think, of his generation. And Angel in America, he played the part of Roy Cohn, which is this really tough, vicious lawyer that helped put the Rosenbergs away. And he was a complete hypocrite because he was a gay man who was closeted and was extremely homophobic, almost like Hoover was. We don't see the paintings on the screen yet, but
Okay,
when
so
you get
let's
them
see
up.
the first painting.
Oh, well, this is a scene from Angels in America. That was that's also Murray, and it's one of the main characters in the play, imagining characters from history who were gay. And in this scene, and this is the play is very complex, and in this case, Murray played an 18th century character.
Who's that?
I forget actually the characters in the play. I didn't do any homework before I came here today, unfortunately, but which I might have done. But it was very, very amusing and very funny.
Is that a ghostly figure?
Yes, it's a ghost.
Okay.
It's a ghost of an 18th century, and it comes
Okay.
to the protagonist of the play in the scene. And it's a quite small painting, actually. And there were a whole series of them. You know, if you want to go to another one,
Okay, let's see the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this is another painting of the same guy in bed, the protagonist, and in this case, it's the first time the angel comes to him. And I actually, Murray was in Broadway in this play, along with a lot of well-known actors, like Jeffrey Wright was in the play, and Cynthia Nixon was in the play, and you know, it had an incredible cast. And I would go backstage actually during the breaks and things, because I had gone there. Murray arranged for me to go there on a regular basis, so I had I was sitting in the third row, and I was drawing from the audience actually. And but what was great for me in this particular work, and these are not that large, these paintings actually, but they had the wings hung up on the stairway behind which is very narrow in the Broadway theaters. So it was hanging up on the stairway, dominating the whole stairway. So I was able to get a good look at the wings and
Well, I have a
draw them.
question about
Yeah.
your choice in composition. Why is it both those images kind of minimal? Like, why isn't, because a lot of your paintings, there's a lot of detail in the background, but
Yeah.
Why did you make that choice?
I was focusing in on particular scenes and on the emotional impact of the scene, and the protagonists were two actors, and I made them very deliberately. They were small paintings, and they were suitable. I felt for that. I mean, they're quite small.
Oh,
And,
okay.
yeah, and so they don't require a lot of. I thought it wouldn't enhance the paintings to put in a lot of extraneous atmosphere. It's a play after all, and I wanted it to look like a play.
Oh, okay. Actually,
Yeah,
then it does.
yeah.
It look.
I wanted it to look like a play.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
why. Okay. Can we have the next image, please?
Yeah, and this is Murray's favorite, I think, of the whole group, and there's quite a lot of them actually. And this is Ethel Rosenberg coming to Murray as a ghost, and he is actually dying of AIDS years and years later, and it's Roy Cohn, which is, I believe, what happened to him.
He died as a, he died.
I believe
of
he
AIDS.
died of AIDS. Yeah, I believe
Okay.
I believe he died of AIDS. I could be getting that wrong, but that's what I believe. And Ethel Rosenberg, who he was responsible for having her electrocuted, comes to him as a
Oh,
ghost.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's an incredible scene, and Murray is
beautiful.
like in a complete shock because of it. And
Well, I think you should tell the audience about Ethel Rosenberg, about her. You told me,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
I think a lot of people
yeah.
don't know that story.
well, she was I forget her husband's name, but they were lumped together as the Rosenbergs. There's a wonderful writer who wrote a book about them. Gosh, the guy who wrote the book about oh my gosh, he's an American writer. He's great. He's passed away, but I forget the name. But he wrote a book about the Rosenberg children, and wonderful book. But they were an old Jewish couple in the who I think lived in the Bronx actually, and they were communists and they were spies, and they were convicted of spying, and there was a lot of controversy about the case, and then they were actually executed, and from what I learned later, you know, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but this is what I gleaned, is that the death penalty was only for spying during wartime, and not during peacetime, and then actually, but this was the time of the McCarthy era, either right before it or during it, and there was an incredible atmosphere, a vindictive atmosphere in this country, and there was a lot of anti-Semitism too. So they were really, they were both killed, and Roy Cohn was instrumental in all of that, and it's quite an interesting story. I wish I could remember the name of the writer. I mean, I'm ashamed of myself, but
well,
maybe it'll come
I
to
think
me.
people get the gist of the story. We have like 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Maybe we could see one more image and then we'll go to break.
Sure, sure. Oh yes, this is another play that Murray was in, and I got commissioned by the Public Theater to make a poster, and this painting was made. It was ahead of Murray as King Lear, and the poster was made into a full-size poster that was on the subways of all around New York when the Public Theater production of King Lear, that starred F. Murray Abraham, was running, and it was an incredible, powerful performance, and I was really honored by, and I did it with the designer Tony Palladino, who was one of the great American graphic designers at the time. I mean, I think even akin to Milton Glaser. I mean, maybe equal to Milton Glaser, and he also died. He was a very good friend of mine and of Murray at the time, and he died since then too. But Tony and I joined forces and made this wonderful poster. And this was that painting was a study was the painting that for the poster, and it was cropped, and Murray's mouth was bigger, and people all over New York were writing things in his mouth, which was very
New York sense of humor.
That's New York, yeah. But it was the whole thing was a great experience and a great honor for me actually to participate in.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna go to a little commercial break, and then
Yeah.
we'll come back and explore some more of your paintings.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Welcome back. We've been talking with Don Perlis. This is the 5th episode that we've had of him and his artwork. We thought it was important to do 5 episodes because so much of his work was political and, charged. And, at least in this episode, we're actually showing a very diverse bodies of work. We're not showing his landscapes or his portraitures, but in this episode, we're showing a lot of his images from theater and literature. So, we'll send it back to you. And
Sure.
I do want to mention that if you want to see his paintings, because seeing it on TV is not the same as seeing the texture and size of these works in real life, that you should go to Denise Bibro Gallery. It's on 20th Street in Manhattan. And that way you really see what the work actually looks like. So take it away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Now let's do the next image, please.
Yeah. Okay. This is I had made a series of paintings based on opera. They're very large, colorful paintings, and it's ironic, but almost the same impulse was behind these as when I made the paintings that were charged, because I was looking for I'm always looking for a dramatic subject, and in making paintings based on opera, it gave me an opportunity to to make a very interesting different settings for each opera, and different costumes, and different dramatic episodes. And in this case,
This is Tosca? Which one?
Tosca is the woman, and
Okay.
she's accusing her painter boyfriend of cheating on her, because he's up on the platform visiting him in church, and he's making a mural, and the woman in the painting, depicted in the painting, is not her. So she's blonde, actually. So she's wondering who the painting, and she's accusing him. And at the same time, if you look behind the pillar, there's an escaped prisoner that I forget the guy's name. A wonderful Italian name of the protagonist, the painter. Shame on me. But he's hiding the prisoner, and later they'll come and try to get him to search the church. But an interesting thing about this painting is that to the right of the pillar is the actual church in Rome that Tosca was written for, actually. Because the opera was actually made for a particular setting in Rome, and finally at the end of the opera, the Castello di San Angelo is where Tosca jumps off the roof. After, I think it's Cardovasi, I believe, is the boyfriend's name, and there was a production. I was in Rome years ago, and they had it on TV, and it was a national event. I mean, all over the country, and they actually used the Castello di San Angelo, and I think it was Placido Domingo played Cardovasi, and Tosca, I forget the woman who played her, jumped off the roof of the Castello di San Angelo in Rome. They had it all set up probably but it was on TV, and it was a national event, and I forget what year it was, but it was quite extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah, because the Italians love their operas.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, the next image, please.
yeah. This was a painting that was done from Homer's Odyssey, which it's actually my favorite book, but I love the Iliad also. And the thing about the Odyssey is about a guy after the war who's a great hero, and like a general, and Ulysses, and he after they win the Battle of Troy, he tries to go home, and the whole Odyssey is the Odyssey is his trip back home to the island where he came from. And on the way home, he has a lot of adventures, and one of the adventures is that he gets marooned on an island, and the Polyphemus, which is the Cyclops, is actually the son of Neptune, who's the god of the sea, who's actually Zeus's brother. And they take refuge in a cave, and Polyphemus, who's this giant one-eyed monster, and there's a whole race of these guys on the island, and they discover that the Greeks are inside. He discovers that the Greeks are inside the cave, but he doesn't know who they are or what they are, and It's an incredible story. So in this painting, it depicts Ulysses and his men in the ship in the front, and they had already blinded Polyphemus, and he's groping, and so he picks up rocks and he's trying to heave it at the ship, and they're running for their lives to escape, which they do actually to get away. So
So is that what
yeah.
brother? Where are the?
Well, they make fun of it.
Yeah,
he makes fun of
brother,
it. Yeah. He
yeah.
makes fun of it. Actually, yeah. The Coen brothers, they make fun
Right,
of it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
based on. There's a lot of stuff based on
Yeah.
on the Odyssey. There's a lot of literature and a lot of contemporary stuff. In fact, James Joyce Ulysses is based on on Homer's Odyssey, and so is Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway is based on also. Well, it's actually based on the James Joyce novel, which is based on on Homer's Odyssey. But there's a lot of yeah. It's a wonderful book.
So okay,
Yeah.
big question.
Yeah,
The paintings that I just saw, did you use a model? Or is that from your head?
I had a great model,
Oh, you
and
did
I
use-
wouldn't have
oh,
made
you
the
used-
painting
oh,
unless
you
I
did-
had. Yeah,
oh,
I
you
had
did use a
I had a
model.
great model, and
Oh, okay.
he was a short guy, but he was perfect. I thought I looked at him and I said, I got to put one eye in the middle of your head. And
Oh,
you're
you
gonna,
did do it.
Yeah, but I didn't take the eye and put it in the middle. I just used them in the studio. But,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, can we see the next image, please?
Oh, well, this is a very early painting, and it's one of the earlier ones that you chose. And I taught for many years, and I lived in Bridgehampton, Long Island, for a while. And I had a basement, and I would bring my female students, 3 of them, and they would live in the basement, and go to the beach, and their payment was paying for me. But I had a wife and baby, and she had a good eye on me. Believe me, I was under supervision, and the girls were cute. They were great. They were very young, and like 19, 20, and they would pose for me. And
It's a beautiful painting.
yeah, thank you.
I love that painting.
Yeah, it's in the collection of a lawyer named Patricia Murphy, and
Yeah, I noticed. A lot of your paintings have the same kind of like I guess you said muted colors. The background, like they look like it could be dusk.
yeah, this was dusk actually, and it's
it
a very
was dusk.
languorous. Yes, and it's a very
Okay.
it's because otherwise the sun would be too bright, and I love that time of day, and I love Watteau and the artists that.
But you do use a similar color palette because I never
Yeah.
see like really vibrant.
I use vibrant colors when it's appropriate, like the Times Square paintings and.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Yeah,
you got me.
yeah,
then. That's true. The
and
Times-
I've made vibrant. It's just when
yeah.
it's appropriate.
But even the Times Square paintings, like you
Yeah.
said, it looks like it's nighttime.
They're at nighttime, but the color's
Yeah.
full palette. The
Okay.
reds are really right. They're very, very high tone paintings, and I've made a lot of high tone paintings actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like to work. But I love Twilight, so what you're saying is accurate.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think we have one more. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, this is maybe the earliest painting, and it's really appropriate actually because it's the first really major, large painting that I ever made, and ironically, it was based on Japanese prints. It was based on one of the Japanese printmakers, and except that he used women in kimonos, and
Very interesting.
and so and the lady in red is my ex-wife Terry, and the little girl who's playing was my daughter Chloe, and she's 43 now,
Okay.
and there she's about 2 or 3, and we actually had a girl who was a neighbor, and she had her horse, and they were German people, and she'd come riding next door, and on the left-hand side of the screen, of the painting, was my actual studio, and the models were my students, actually.
How did you stage that, though? I mean, the horse could not have been there.
Well, it was there at times. It was there at times. I would have the horse come, and I'd have the girl stand there, and because at this time I didn't it was early, it was 70s, right? So my style was not formed, so I had to learn how to put a big painting together. But one thing that this painting has that's always been underneath all of my work is the influence of a great Italian painter named Veronese, and who did these big, beautiful, and he's late Renaissance, like Venetian artist, and he's the most wonderful colorist. He was a student of Titian, And his real name was Paolo Cagliari, but the Met has got his paintings, and the Frick has got his paintings. You can see them there. He's one of the greatest colorists that ever lived, and I've always been very heavily influenced by his work, and that painting was an early attempt.
So once again,
Yeah.
every time you come here, we talk about your paintings and we run out of time.
Okay.
And so, we're down to our last minute of the show.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy talking about your work. I'm a big fan.
Thank you so much. Corinne.
And this is the 5th episode. Thank you so much. I think the only work we're leaving out, I think, is you're exploring, what you call it, the lost or 7 deadly sins, or what is it, the name of the series you're working on now?
The Me Too movement paintings.
No, that's the 7 deadly.
And I'm also doing seven those are new. Yes, that's right. Those are new. Yeah, I'm doing
so you're doing
now.
the Me Too
They're in progress,
series.
but I made a Me Too series. I
Right.
made 3 paintings that actually, which are a surprise, but they're great. They're big.
Okay, so
yeah.
if you want to learn more about Don Perlis, in the credits it's donperlis.com or donaldperlis.com.
Donperlis.com. Donperlis.com. Yeah.
You can go to Denise Bibro Gallery. I think you've seen a lot of his work in these 5 episodes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'ma show you how to party.